All right, everyone. So today I wanted to talk about one of those things in Raid Shadow Legends that you absolutely want to understand how this works properly. It's going to be huge, especially for the clan boss, arena, and dungeons. And actually, interestingly enough, Raid Shadow Legends, the official channel, has a video where they go over this, but in my opinion, I don't think they really explained it very well. So I'm going to do my best to explain this to you guys, hopefully better than they explained it on the official Raid Shadow Legends channel. And what that is accuracy versus resistance. And you guys will see here why it's so important to be aware of this, because even if you're off by a little bit, that's going to completely cripple your character. And you're going to start to see that just a couple points of accuracy could be the difference between your buffs landing almost all the time and then really struggling to land even half of the time. It makes that big of a difference. So I wanted to show you guys an actual graph here, and it might look a little bit confusing, but I promise you guys it's not. And there's three numbers that I wanted to actually talk about on this graph. And we're going to start off actually with number 3 here. Now what this graph is it's how much accuracy you have as the attacker versus how much resistance the enemies have as the defender. But very importantly, the accuracy numbers and the resistance numbers don't actually mean anything. The only thing that matters is how much accuracy you have as the attacker versus how much resistance the enemy has as the defender, and what the difference between those two numbers are. So it doesn't matter if you have 300 accuracy versus 30 accuracy. If you have 30 accuracy and your enemy has 0 resistance, it's the exact same effect that if you have 300 accuracy and the enemy has 270 resistance. Because in both of those cases right there, if we take the accuracy and subtract the resistance, we get the difference, which is 30, and they have the exact same effect. Very, very important. And this is going to cause a lot of people as well to overgear their characters in a way where you're just wasting a lot of stats and accuracy that you don't have to. Now, number 3 is probably the most important number on this actual graph here, which is why I wanted to talk about it the most. And if you're only going to understand this part of the video and number 1 and number 2 confuse you, definitely make sure that you understand number 3. So, number 3 is the point on the graph where when an attacker, you have the exact same accuracy as the resistance of whoever it is that is defending. So both of those numbers cancel each other out, and you have a difference of 0. So again, it doesn't matter if you have 100 accuracy and your enemy has 100 resistance. That is the exact same effect that if you have 1 accuracy and the enemy has 1 resistance. Or if you had 1,000,000 accuracy and they had 1,000,000 resistance. In all those scenarios, if you cancel them out and take one and subtract it from the other, you end up with 0. And in that case, when you do have the same accuracy as whoever it is that's defending and their resistance, you have a 92% chance of applying your debuff. Okay, so I said 92% chance of applying the debuff, but very importantly, this entire step, everything that I've talked about so far, doesn't actually happen until you've already succeeded whatever percent chance you actually see on the skill if it's RNG based. Now, some debuffs will not have a percent chance, they'll just always apply. But if you go to, let's just go to a champion here so you guys can see. Alright, so as a 60% chance of applying the 50% decrease debuff for 2 turns. So everything that I've talked about doesn't happen until you've already succeeded at that 60%. So the accuracy and resistance stuff is the second RNG step in the process. I know there's multiple layers of RNG in Raid Shadow Legends. That's just how the game works. I don't think you guys should be too surprised by this. But if a debuff says 100% chance of placing a debuff, that doesn't mean 100%. That means 100% for the first step. And then you go into what we are talking about right here. A debuff will never have a 100% chance of applying. Never, ever. Even if you have 1,000,000 accuracy and your enemies have 0 resistance, if you go back to the actual chart here, you guys will see that there's always about a 3 to 4% or so chance that your debuffs still get resisted. And there's just nothing you can do about this. It's just the way the system is. And you have to know that even skills that say 100% chance to apply the debuff in the tooltip, that's just step 1 in the RNG process. Once step 1 succeeds, now you have to move on to step 2, which is what this entire video is talking about, and step 2 never has a 100% chance. but very important. So 92% chance when you have the same accuracy as the resistance of the enemies. Now you can see if we go back to the actual chart here, that's number 3 on the graph. And it doesn't actually go up a lot more past this point. So you can still end up getting a good amount of accuracy past the resistance of what your enemies have. But is it really worth it at that point? You know, you might be able to get a couple of extra points, 3, 4, maybe even 5% chance to apply your debuffs, but you're already at 92%. So my advice is for most people, unless you're an extreme min-maxer, once you have the same accuracy as the resistance of the enemies that you're facing, you don't really have to worry too much about getting more accuracy because you're already at a 92% chance, and spending a ton of time and effort really going for a lot of extra accuracy on your gear for a couple of extra percent, for most people it's just not going to be worth it. Now what you do have to worry about is the other side of the scale there. So now what happens when you have way less accuracy than the resistance of the enemies that you are attacking? And you can see here, this is when things fall off very, very quickly. You can see how fast the chart starts to go down, and even the differences between having, 40 less accuracy versus the resistance of who you're attacking, that's a major difference. If you have 40 less accuracy, now you're only about a 50-50 chance of applying your debuff. And this is after step 1 has already succeeded. So if you have a 50% chance to apply your debuff, that's what it says in the actual skill tip, and then you're 40 accuracy short of whatever resistance the enemies have, you only have about a 25% chance of actually applying that debuff. So it's very important to make sure that you have the right amount of accuracy, but also make sure that you don't go overboard. So now let's talk about number 2 on this actual graph here, because that's going to be the second easiest number to understand. And this is kind of the number that they focused a lot on in the official Raid Shadow Legends video, because this is the default value that a lot of champions in Raid Shadow Legends have for their accuracy and resistance. Now, not every champion is like this. In fact, more champions as of lately have not had the default accuracy and resistance, but it is 0 accuracy and 30 resistance. So if you take a look, especially like at a lot of earlier champions, you'll see in the champion index, if you look at their stats, they will indeed have 30 resist and 0 accuracy. So here's Horden. Then if we go to Lordly Legionary, he also has 30 resistance and 0 accuracy. So that's the default point, but not every champion. So definitely take a look, like especially a lot of legendaries and a lot of newer champions, they have 40 resistance and 20 accuracy. But if you do have a champion that has the default accuracy and resistance attacking another champion with the default accuracy and resistance, so let's say our Horden decides to attack Lordly Legionnaire here, they both have 0 accuracy and 30 resistance. So now we are attacking with 0 accuracy versus a defender of 30 resistance, and we have a 70% chance of applying the debuff, and they have a 30% chance of resisting the debuff. So you can see here that that does line up with number 2 on the actual graph. And the numbers, if you go up the graph, the y-axis, the 0, 20, positive numbers, that is the chances of actually applying the debuff, which makes sense because we were just talking about number 3, which was 92%, and that's right in between the 80 and the 100. Now, the other numbers, the ones that are negative on the x-axis, that is the difference between the accuracy that you have as the attacker versus the resistance that the defender has. So if I have 30 less accuracy versus the amount of resistance that they have, which makes sense because in this example, we have 0 accuracy and they have 30 resistance, you could see that it's going to be in between that minus 20 and minus 40, which is exactly where we get that number 2. And that's going to give us that 70% chance to apply the debuff and a 30% chance to not apply the debuff. And finally, the last number on this actual chart is 1. Now, the reason why 1 is important is because this is the point where you have a 50% chance to apply the debuff and a 50% chance to not apply the debuff. And interestingly enough, you guys know now that the chart, it falls off really, really quickly because this happens at 42. So if you have 0 accuracy and your opponent has 42 resistance, now you have a 50% chance of failing and not applying the debuff. So in that example that we just talked about, where our Horde in here attacked the Lordly Legionnaire, we had 0 accuracy and 30 resistance, and we had a 70% chance to succeed and a 30% chance to fail. Now, all we have to do on our Lordly Legionnaire is increase his resistance by 12, and even 12 points of resistance now is going to cause our chance to succeed to go all the way down from a 70% down to a 50%. So it falls off very, very quickly, which is why it's very important to make sure that you have as close accuracy to the resistance of whatever enemies that you are facing. So I know that this video was just a ton of information, which is why I also did my best to include the least complicated stuff earlier on and leave the slightly more complicated stuff kind of for the second half of the video. But to kind of wrap things off, this is just kind of one of those things that you're going to want to be aware of, especially when it comes to gearing up. If you're gearing up your accuracy and your resistance incorrectly, you're going to have either too few, too much, and either way, if you have too many points or too few points, that's just a lot of stats on gear that you don't really need to have, which you could optimize and put those stats to much better use in other areas. So definitely take a bit of time to kind of go through and take a look at the accuracy and resistance of your champions, kind of look at the content that you are facing and see how it lines up with what I explained in this video, and maybe you'll be able to optimize your gear and your champions quite a bit now. So that's going to be it for the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and hopefully this was an informative video. That was the goal for today, is lots of information. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed and you want more videos like this, consider subscribing to the channel. If you want to help out, feel free to leave a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine. And more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, and all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen right about now. Feel free to check them out. But if not, until next time, have a great day, everyone. And this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.